Comparison of acute exercise responses between conventional video gaming and isometric resistance exergaming. The George Washington University Medical Center, School of Public Health and Health Services, Department of Exercise Science, Washington, D.C., Department of Health Sciences, Gettysburg College, Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, and National Institutes of Health, Hatfield Clinical Research Center, Bethesda, Maryland. Abstract. Comparison of acute exercise responses between conventional video gaming and isometric resistance exergaming. Journal of Strength Conditioning Research 24/7, 1799 through 1803, 2010. Exergaming is a relatively new type of entertainment that couples physical activity with video gaming. To date, research that has focused on the physiological responses to exergaming has been focused exclusively on aerobic type activities. The purpose of this project was to describe the acute exercise responses, i.e. oxygen uptake, VO2, heart rate, and rate of perceived exertion, RPE, to exergaming using full-body isometric muscle resistance, and to determine whether these responses are different during single versus opponent-based play. Male subjects, N equals 32, were randomly and equally divided into either an experimental, EXP, or control, CON, group. Acute exercise response, VO2, heart rate, and RPE were measured in all subjects during both solo and opponent-based video game play. Subjects in the EXP group played using a controller that relied on full-bodied isometric muscle resistance to manipulate the on-screen character, whereas CON subjects used a conventional handheld controller. During solo play, the EXP group exhibited significantly higher values for VO2, 9.60 plus or minus 0.5 milliliters per kg per minute, and energy expenditure, 3.50 plus or minus 0.14 kcals per minute. Then the CON group, VO2, 5.05 plus or minus 0.16 milliliters per kg per minute, energy expenditure 1.92 plus or minus 0.07 kcals per minute. These changes occurred with no significant difference in RPE or heart rate between the groups. These results suggest that whole-body isometric exergaming results in greater energy expenditure than conventional video gaming, with no increase in perceived exertion during play. This could have important implications regarding long-term energy expenditure in gamers. Introduction. Americans spend more time in front of a screen, either watching television, videos, or playing video games, than anything except sleeping. Computer and video game software sales in 2005 in the United States were $7 billion, a more than doubling of the industry software sales since 1996. In 2006, 93% of computer game buyers and 83% of console game buyers were over the age of 18, with 44% of video game players falling between 18 and 49 years old. Research has shown that gamers devote more than triple the amount of time playing video games each week than they do reading, exercising, playing sports, volunteering, or being involved in cultural activities. The proliferation of video games has led to a progressive decline in the amount of time that many young Americans are spending performing physical activity. It is reasonable to speculate that the increase in time spent performing a sedentary leisure activity is a contributing factor to the current obesity problem facing American society. Exergaming is a relatively new technology of video gaming that couples physical activity and video gaming in the hopes of increasing the physical demands of video game play. Arguably, the most popular exergaming example would be the Globe arcade game phenomenon known as Dance Dance Revolution, DDR. The DDR game has been participant dance a specific platform on a footpad that corresponds to a musical beat that is displayed on a video monitor. Exergaming has been shown to increase heart rate, HR, and oxygen uptake, VO2, when compared with resting levels. In fact, preliminary evidence has shown that using exergaming products results in physical activity level that meets current American College of Sports Medicine (ACSM) recommendations and exceeds them in some cases. However, exergaming products have only been evaluated or studied in the context of aerobic exercise response. The use of rhythmic aerobic exercise. To date, no studies have been conducted that examine the acute or chronic physiological effects of an anaerobic or resistance trained with an exergaming device. The paucity of evidence regarding exergaming with a resistance training component is largely a result of the previous unavailability of resistance-based exergaming device. Unlike other exergaming options, the Exerstation from Power Grid Fitness uses isometric muscle forces as a gateway to controlling any video game. Previous research has shown that metabolic rate can be altered with isometric training, and numerous studies have demonstrated that both submaximal and maximum isometric contractions can effectively build strength. Furthermore, gains in muscular strength are usually concurrent with increases in muscle mass. Consequently, an increase in muscle mass can lead to an increase in one's resting metabolic rate, which may lead to long-term reduction in fat mass. To date, exergaming studies have focused exclusively on single-player interactions with the game itself, with competitive play against a human opponent yet to be evaluated. Competitive experience have been perceived to be healthy for children because they teach them how to deal with a competitive society. Studies suggest that when a strenuous physical activity is to be performed, the participant were more likely to insist that a competition takes place along with it. In a study of 16 to 25-year-old males, Sales et al. Found that benefits of competition to be important in the overall experience of physical activity. Specific efficacy beliefs defined as individuals' ability to confidently persist in physical activity when faced with an obstacles or aversion stimuli, increase the likelihood that one will choose to adapt or adhere to physical activity. It has also been shown previously that a competitive physical activity atmosphere can elicit better performance gains. With respect to exergaming, it is unclear whether competition with an opponent-based atmosphere elicits a greater exercise response than playing alone. We hypothesize that exergaming incorporates an isometric resistance component will elicit an elevated HR and VO2 significantly greater than that encountered with conventional gaming. We also hypothesize that the exercise response to isometric exergaming will be significantly greater when a subject plays against an opponent compared with playing alone. Therefore, the primary purpose of the study will be to characterize the acute exercise responses, VO2, HR, energy expenditure, and rating of perceived exertion, RPE, during isometric exergaming. The secondary purpose will be to determine whether these responses are different when comparing single with opponent-based play. Methods. The experimental approach to the problem. The purpose of the study was to describe the exercise responses, dependent variables to conventional gaming and isometric exergaming during a competitive and non-competitive condition. The test the previously stated hypothesis, males, college-age subjects, and 32 were divided equally into control, CON, and experimental, EXP groups, with the CON group using a conventional handheld Xbox, Microsoft, Redmond, Washington, USA, game controller, and the EXP group using an Exerstation Interaction Laboratories, Beltsville, Maryland, USA, full-bodied isometric game controller. All subjects played the video game Fuzion Frenzy, Blitz Gamers, Leamington Spa, United Kingdom, under two separate conditions alone or against a human opponent. During play, HR, VO2, and RPE were recorded and used for subsequent statistical analysis. Subjects. Male subjects, N equals 32, aged 18 to 30 years, were recruited from the student population at George Washington University. Participants were excluded from the study if they answered yes to any questions on the physical activity readiness questionnaire or had familiarity with the Fuzion Frenzy or the Exerstation controller. All subjects who participated in the study had a body fat percentage lower than 20%, as assessed by way of air plasmography, BOD, Pod, Life Measurement Incorporated, Concord, California, USA. The study was approved by the George Washington University Institutional Review Board, and each subject was required to complete a written, informed consent form before participation in the study. Procedures. Gaming protocol. Subjects of both the CON and EXP groups played 30 minutes of Fuzion Frenzy, both alone and against a randomly assigned opponent from the same group. Heart rate, VO2, and RPE were recorded over the course of the 30 minutes. Oxygen consumption was collected by way of open circuit spirometer using a Parvomedic's True 1 2400 metabolic cart. The VO2 values were used to calculate energy expenditure to be used in subsequent analysis. The RPE was measured using a 15-point Borg scale at the 10th and 20th and 30th minute of the protocol during both gaming bouts. All subjects performed the solo gameplay conditions first and returned within 1 to 2 weeks to complete the gaming trial against the opponent. Statistical analysis. Pre- and post-test values for RPE, HR, VO2, and caloric expenditure were compared using paired samples t-test. All data are reported by means and standard errors and are reported at the 0.05 level of significance. Results. Significantly higher VO2 values were seen in the EXP group as compared with the CON group. For both single 9.6 plus or minus 0.50 milliliters per kg per minute versus 5.05 plus or minus 0.16 milliliters per kg per minute, EF equals 2.2, and competitive 9.22 plus or minus 0.35 milliliters per kg per minute versus 4.57 plus or minus 2.4 milliliters per kg per minute, EF equals 2.7. Bouts of Exergaming respectively, Figure 1. Total energy consumption, Figure 2a, was significantly higher in the EXP versus CON group, 61.58 plus or minus 3.1 kcals versus 32.44 plus or minus 1.4 kcals, EF equals 2.1. Pardon me. As was rate of energy consumption, Figure 2b, 3.50 plus or minus 0.14 kcals per minute versus 1.92 plus or minus 0.07 kcals per minute, EF equals 2.5. There were no significant differences in HR, Figure 3, or RPE, Figure 4, between the CON and EXP conditions. Within each group, there were no significant differences between solo and competitive play for any of the physiological measures. Discussion. The purpose of the study was to describe the exercise response to full-body isometric resistance exergaming and to determine whether those responses differ between solo and competitive play. The primary finding of the study is that isometric exergaming did indeed result in a significant increase in VO2 as compared with the conventional video game play. Furthermore, the increase in energy expenditure that was seen in the EXP group occurred with no significant increase in HR or RPE. It was reported previously that the isometric exergaming increases HR and VO2 when compared with resting levels. The present study extends those conclusions by demonstrating that chronic gaming using full-body isometric actions results in greater energy expenditure than conventional video gaming with no significant increase of perceived exertion. This finding has important practical implications because it suggests that gamers can significantly increase caloric expenditure while playing without perceiving this increase as long as any more fatiguing than conventional gaming. In fact, in this current study, subjects who use the Exerstation controller burn nearly twice as many calories during the same period of play as the CON group. Previous reports have shown that video gamers spend 3 times the amount of time per week playing video games than exercising. Given this large amount of time that gamers spend playing video games, it is reasonable to assume that chronic play using a full-bodied isometric controller may lead to profoundly increased levels of energy expenditure over the long term. In addition, this study is the first to use a resistance-based exercise to manipulate a character on screen. Increases in muscle mass and strength that would occur with long-term gameplay are plausible, and this area of inquiry warrants further exploration. The second primary purpose of this study was to determine whether gaming against an opponent would elicit a different acute exercise response than during solo play. In all of these variables measured, there were no significant differences between solo and opponent-based play with either the hand controller or the Exerstation. The results found in this study do not necessarily agree with the results from previous studies, which show an increase in performance gains when competition is involved. One limitation of this current study is that during the solo gaming conditions, subjects played against 3 computer-generated opponents. The experimental design for this study had called for a solo bout of exergaming followed by a second bout of competition-based exergaming. The game chosen for the study was Fuzion Frenzy. because of its abilities to elicit consistent full-bodied isometric actions in all directions of movement. However, Fusion Frenzy is designed so that 4 opponents are on screen at any given time, regardless of how many actual people are playing in the game. On-screen opponents that are not being controlled by an actual player are controlled by the game itself. In effect, this means that during solo play, the subjects were competing against 3 other computer-controlled components. Therefore, when the EXP competition-based condition occurred, the only difference from solo condition was that a human opponent was now controlling one of the on-screen opponents, which was previously being controlled by the computer. As a result, the on-screen conditions were likely not noticeably different between the solo and competitive trials. It is possible that Fusion Frenzy game, by its design, prevented us from identifying differences in the dependent variables between the solo and competitive conditions. Because of it is possible that the subjects never really experience a non-competitive gaming experience, even though the solo condition was not played against a human opponent. Previous studies have shown that competition has been proven to elicit higher gains when measuring performance-based outcomes. The implications of this scenario in the study are unknown, because further work would need to be done to determine whether players compete differently against computer-generated or human opponents. Practical applications. Interactive video games are a growing segment of the video game industry and are experiencing increased global popularity. Given the tremendous health and financial burdens caused by physical inactivity, it is reasonable to speculate that the successful melding of a video gaming and the physical activity could potentially have a profound impact on the health of American youth. The result of this study are the first to demonstrate that resistance training may play an important role in the evolution of the exergaming phenomenon, which has to this point been based solely on the aerobic modes of exercise. In addition, the results of the study show that isometric resistance is effective in increasing caloric expenditure to a greater degree than conventional gaming, with no increase in perceived exertion. These findings could have profound implications on the design of future exergames, in that players can increase their energy expenditure without feeling like they have to exercise to do so. Further research needs to be done exploring the long-term physiological effects of sustained full-body isometric exercise and how these effects may impact overall health. Acknowledgements. This study was funded by a grant from the International Health, Racquet, and Sports Club Association. The authors thank Interaction Labs for donations of the ExerStation controllers used in the study. The results of this present study do not constitute endorsement by the ExerStation by the authors or by the NSCA.